The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Listen in as your host, Casey Colburn, brings together a perfectly picked panel of guests to discuss hot topics and events within the metaphysical and paranormal field. But don't worry, should the discussions get too heated, our studio's witch will sound her cackle to simmer the cauldron back down. Listen for new episodes of Cauldron Talk with Casey Colburn every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. only on Paranormal Buzz Radio. Good evening, listeners. It is Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and you're listening to Cauldron Talk with Casey Colburn here on Paranormal Buzz Radio. This is Season 1, Episode 2, and we are discussing the differences between paganism, Wicca, and witchcraft. I'm your host, Casey Colburn, and today we are welcoming to our circle Patti Negri, Alonnie Milligan, Megan Deputy, and Gale Hanby. Welcome to my circle, ladies. How are we all doing?
Excellent.
Blessed be.
Before we jump in, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Patti Negri. I am a psychic, medium, and witch. I knew when I was little that I was somewhat different than most people. I was able to see and talk to the other side. I thought everybody could. I literally did my first seance at age 7 or 8 in my little suburban home. Went into the hallway with no windows and doors, closed everything, came up with my first chant, and the windowless, lightless room filled with orbs and lights. And on the other side, on the witchy side of things, I would find myself in my backyard, like literally picking rosemary off of the bushes and putting them in my mom's wallet, knowing that that would give her more money. I mean, it's just in the blood, I guess. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised actually with no kind of belief system at all. So it's just born there. And then I've studied my whole dang life. But I live in LA. I am a Hollywood girl. I live in the Hollywood Hills. I do lots of television because I am a Hollywood girl and I come from the entertainment industry. I'm mostly known, I'm a recurring person on Ghost Adventures. I think I just shot my 10th or 11th episode a couple weeks ago, which is great because I get to go to really haunted and crazy places and then show ideas of witchcraft too. Because where he started out my psychic-y, medium-y side, he's allowing me to be my witchy side and clearing places where there are spirits for the first time. And so it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I look forward to watching the new episodes.
Thanks.
I know we all know Alonnie from our last episode, but would you mind going back through and telling everybody about yourself?
Absolutely. And just like Patti, I think witches are witches from just about birth. I'm a psychic medium. My name's Alonnie Phoenix Milligan. Alonnie Phoenix is my chosen magical name. I have been a child of earth and sky, practicing since probably 2nd or 3rd grade, playing with Barbies. All the other ones had the cool Barbie clothes. Mine were sky-clad or had a scarf wrapped around them. They were playing in the dirt and sitting on the thrones made of stones, and it's in the blood. I agree. It's something that I just remembered throughout my life. This is how you do this. This is how this goes with this. And it felt natural to me. Talking to dead people, natural stuff. I enjoy that. It is something that is a calling for some people, is a natural for some people, and for others that are close to the surface, we are able to show them some stuff, give them a little bit of education, a little guidance, and a little push. And like Patti, I'm an amateur actress. I've only been in a few films. I enjoy that. That's a whole lot of fun. I've been typecast as the gypsy fortune teller in 4 movies, and the last one, I got to be murdered, which was a whole lot of fun. I enjoyed that very much. And then we get to play with you, which is always fun, Kay.
Yes. I have to say, I'm falling over because you're a Barbie girl. I'm a Barbie girl. I have hundreds, but my Barbies were always very special and very different too. And I still play with them. The ultimate goddess, is she not?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I've been practicing varying degrees of witchcraft or Wicca or paganism. I kind of personally, I use the terms interchangeably for to a large degree for 40 some years now. I'm living in Georgia right now with 2 rescue dogs. I read tarot professionally at a metaphysical store down here. I've written 3 books, recorded a CD with poetry on it. What I teach, I've taught classes. I'm teaching classes now in some of these things.
I will say that Gale has been a mentor to me since the early 90s. She is a phenomenal mentor, teacher, priestess, and friend.
Thank you. We've been friends for a really long time.
I think since dirt.
Yes, at least since dirt.
Gale is very humble about her talents, and so I will be happy to trumpet her stuff.
Well, thank you, Casey. It's wonderful to be speaking with you today. My name is Megan Deputy, and I've been a practitioner of eclectic traditional witchcraft for many, many years. I am co-host of the show The Ghost Finders, and we have taken the use of like traditional witchcraft and these practices and communicating with the spirits in a paranormal investigation setting. And a little bit about myself is I have, oh my goodness, I do many things. My day job too is working in the film industry as a makeup artist, but I've been a practitioner of witchcraft, like I've said, pretty much most of my life. My husband and I were even married by a witch who has taught me many things, lithomancy, divination with stones, and just really, really old ways. I do a lot of earth magic, which I think also contributes to the ease I have with communicating with spirit, and not just like human, but elemental and everything that incorporates. It's a beautiful journey, and I've been very happy to share that through the show The Ghost Finders with a lot of others. We've had a lot of fans come up and be very thankful for showcasing these things in a loving way and not trying to, how would you say, try and make it anything that it's not. It's beautiful. It's building a relationship. It's not scary. It's not spooky. And a lot of what Hollywood tries to do, it's very raw, and it can come off strange to a lot of people who are not used to witchcraft or these old ways. But I think us doing it like earnestly with love in our hearts, it's come across very sincere as it is, and we've had a beautiful feedback from it as well.
So yeah, it's really cool because as I'm hearing you guys talk, it's reminding me of my own like life story, because I've talked about it a little bit, but I've learned things without knowing that they had specific terms or, words for any of this. I just kind of knew how to do certain things, and it's really kind of cool to see and connect with other people that have had similar things.
We're everywhere. Aren't we from California to New York? We're everywhere.
We are everywhere. And it's kind of nice that it's like out of the broom closet now. And it's trippy to me that witchcraft and Wicca is becoming like a fad. Makeup companies are doing it, clothes are back there. I mean, again, we're way ahead of the curve, all of us right here, but I just love it because it's a new awareness for people. Even if young girls are coming into it for the first moment as just like, okay, it's cool to be a witch. But if they're really learning something, if they're really stepping into accountability and responsibility and magic and the respect and love of earth, what could be better?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. The little witchlets that come in and they have their questions. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So, all right. So for my first question for you ladies, I have, what is paganism, Wicca, and witchcraft, and what are the major differences between them all?
Oh, am I going first? Okay. Okay. In my experience, there's going to be as many people as there are different ideas. Paganism is a belief system that's against not your traditional Judeo-Christian. It's often multiple deity. To be a pagan is, again, left of center of the regular path of mainstream religion. And it usually means, more than one god or goddess. To me, Wicca itself is a religion. That is a goddess worship. You're taking it on. You work with a goddess. You follow the Sabbats. There's many kind of witches, and Wicca is just one of them. You could be Thelemic, you could be traditional, you could be chaos, you can be, good old garden witch. You could be many kinds of things, but Wicca is the goddess-oriented one. Came back about 50, 60 years ago, really took space. And to me, witchcraft is a practice. It's a practice of, I believe, or people believe that witchcraft, we can change fate. We could take something and shift it and change it and mold it, whether we're working with nature, whether we're working with deity, whether we're working with elements itself. It's not the status quo of following fate as it is and going downhill. To do the craft, I'm going to switch this. I'm going to make it what I want. It's taking control of your life. That's, in oversimplified terms, what my belief system. But yours is?
Paganism for me is the roots, the foundation. It's the umbrella that all these other pieces fall underneath. And it's from where things have sprung from, all these faiths and traditions and religions. And for me, it's that tribal connection to the earth and to the people who are of the earth and worship, in that respect, honor, are centered around that piece of themselves that is connected to earth and sky. Wicca for me is a challenging terminology. I feel like what I do is it's the witchcraft. It's very old. I do very old traditional things, and to me, Wicca, the terminology helps because it's very user friendly. It's very soft. It's very approachable. I had a employer rip up a resume because it said I was a priestess on there, right? And ripped up my resume. And who didn't come to me a few months later looking for assistance?
Wow.
Right? So, but that happens to us all the time. So for me, I'm an out of the closet witch. That is my term. And I took that as a mantle, and my part of that is responsibility and education of the craft and clearing up the myths, and whether you call it Wicca or witchcraft or any of the other terms that are going to follow under paganism, it's all back to the center. And the center is, for me, Mother and Father God, earth and sky earth. It is multidimensional and multifaceted, and it just feels like home.
That is actually one of the terms that I've used for a lot of people when they ask me, why have you chosen this path and all that, and I say, it feels like home, and it feels right.
So paganism, I'm sure as many of you know, is kind of an umbrella term. There are many different forms of paganism as well as pagans. So there are Druids who are pagans. There are Wiccans who are pagans. That's just like saying, there's many different forms of Christianity. There's Baptists, there's Catholics. It's a whole beautiful vast array. And Wiccans and that practice is one of those forms. And witchcraft is the technique used. That's the heart of it. So there are many different pagans who perform witchcraft in various different ways. There's even forms of Greek paganism, Egyptian. So to me, witchcraft is that practice, that ritual work, that intent. That is your witchcraft, and it is different for every single witch and every single different practitioner. It's your art. It's the craft. That is witchcraft.
The first book that I ever found, which was way back, 40 some years ago, before there were, metaphysical and occult sections in the big bookstores and all, I found a copy of Paul Hewson's book, Mastering Witchcraft, on a paperback rack in a Rite Aid or something, one of the drugstore chains. And I bought it because it seemed like an interesting topic. Now, so my first exposure to this was very non-religious. It was a practical book about how to get a leg up on the people around you if you needed one, how to make your life easier with these spells and ways of working things. So if I had to define it, I would say that witchcraft is a technical term. Witchcraft gives you the technical skills whereby you are practicing magic and changing things in accordance to your will, as Crowley put it. I would think that in my definition, paganism is more of a worship form, a veneration, if you will, of country values, which is the original meaning of pagan, is someone from the country, similar to the way heathen is someone not from cities. And it implies that you are looking at nature as a deity or a source of deity and connection. And that, of course, paganism covers it's a big tent, and it covers an awful lot of different approaches to the topic. Wicca, I think specifically, is a religious, a spiritual path that has a lot of definite sects in it, if you will, sects, not sex. Has a lot of different versions of it, but it's so I won't say that it's a uniform practice, but I think it definitely includes deity connecting and specific worship forms, following the holidays, the Sabbats and the Esbats, and being a little more formal of a practice, in my view, than paganism is. I don't know if I hope that made sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Wicca is like the high Episcopal Church. Wicca is the Catholic religion, and everything else, paganism is the little country churches where people speak in tongues, and then witchcraft is psychotherapy.
Beautifully said. For my very own witchcraft, my own craft, I decided to blend together a lot of the Native American traditions too, because I am Seneca, and so for me, that's making it my own is what was very important for me. I don't know if either of you have anything similar like that or not, but that's just for me, that's what felt right.
Completely. I couldn't fall into a category anymore. I don't even think I could fall into Wiccan anymore, because it's, to me, again, it's a shamanic belief system. We're working with, not because what we read in a book tells us so. It's maybe we read the book, but it's what the insides is telling us, what we're just knowing natural, what we're doing. So my practice includes anybody and everything that feels right to me, from Native American to different shamanic to Peruvian to all forms of witchcraft, to Norwegian to Celtic to the chaos. I like the kind of craziness of that. So yeah, I just throw it all in one great big cauldron.
I agree. I think that's the lovely part of this, that we don't pigeonhole ourselves, because you're going to pick and choose a little bit out of everything. And I have Native American roots, and that's where a lot of my knowledge has come from. And being able to go into this for a little bit and go into that a little bit. And the lovely part about age and wisdom is you realize that when you take a little bit of everything and put it into your practice, how enriched you are.
Yes.
I'm happy to hear you guys kind of feel the same. I think that as well, I say this, like your magics and your relationship, that intent needs to be focused and pure. So like you're saying, when it feels like home, that's right to me, And when I'm following ritual that might have been very old and, I'm putting myself into it. I like to say it's kind of like cooking a recipe to other witches who are learning, like, oh, well, I need to follow the recipe exactly. I was like, well, there are some cooks who will tell you that, yes, you do. And that's understandable. And again, nothing wrong to that. But the way I like to cook or craft, so to speak, is I will follow that ritual or recipe. But I know when I'm baking, I was like, for this, Samhain's drawing near, and this and that and the other. And I like a little extra cinnamon in my food for this particular recipe. I'm going to add a few pinches more of cinnamon because that's more for me. I know that's suited more for my taste and what I'm cooking for at this moment. And that's the same with ritual. So I will pour a little bit of myself and what I'm feeling and tap into that instinctual relationship with who I'm communicating with. And it's just like cooking your recipe and putting a little bit of yourself. And I feel like sometimes the magics are much more potent when I'm doing this. And again, it's whatever. I've had witches ask me, well, I feel more comfortable following the cookbook exactly. That's fine. Then that's right for you as well. There's not just one right answer or one right way.
Oh, I definitely would consider myself to be eclectic. Not that I will use any, as a friend of mine used to say, I use anything that doesn't run away first. But there are some traditions that I think are more natural to me, although I have been, I have a lot of friends in different traditions down here too. Oddly enough, you would think with Georgia being a lot in the Bible Belt, there's a surprising number of pagans and witches down in this neck of the woods. And I think it's more because of the proximity perhaps to Atlanta, which is much more cosmopolitan than a lot of other parts of Georgia. But I mean, over the years, I've studied many different things, and I will sometimes try to piece together theories and techniques from different practices to see if they work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's like in my experience, some of the Egyptian deities do not work or play well with others. They prefer their own company, being a very ancient culture and a very ancient practice. They prefer to be kept in that arena by themselves. But a lot of the other ones, in my experience, don't seem to mind being mingled in a ritual or mingled in a ceremony of some sort. I know that, and now I can't even, appropriating culture is a very big deal, and I try to be extremely respectful if I am working with magical practices that are not, I guess what I would say I was brought up with. I mean, my forebears, my ancestry is basically French and English and a little bit of German in there. So not really much Celtic, but I tend to work with the deities that speak to me. And that seems to have worked well over all this time. I doubt very much that I would go in to any circle anywhere and start working with the Orishas or the Loas or any of that cultural brand of magic, although I'm conversant with it. I've never been initiated in any of those traditions, so I find that I do not work in those. And I personally would be very hesitant to work with a lot of Native American traditions, since it's not mine. I don't belong to that. And so I would bow to your, Casey, I would bow to your higher level right to do that work, if you get what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it very clearly.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Certain medicines aren't for everybody.
Exactly.
And certainly.
Exactly.
And what I like to do is I like to learn as much as possible, and then if something does feel right to me, I'll use it. Or if so spirit teaches me a lot of things, and so if it's being taught to me through spirit, then I'll use it. But If it doesn't seem right, or I just don't understand it, I don't use it until I do. But I do try to stick a little bit more to traditional native stuff. I don't go into like shamanic stuff, just because that's not my place. I'm not a shaman. I don't claim to be one. But I do use my native traditions in it.
I think that if you're one of the people that can connect directly with spirit, it is my personal belief that there is a lot of work that the different gods and goddesses and spirits are trying to accomplish on the planet at this time, and they may not have enough specific people of a specific bloodline or ancestral type to work with. And it is my personal belief that if you can hear them, you are entitled to work with them, at least to some extent, because they've sort of picked you out, said, hi, let's have a conversation about what I do and how you can be my vessel on earth to accomplish the things that I'd like to see accomplished. So at the moment, I if you saw my house, I have altars for all sorts of diverse creatures and people. And I don't find anything weird in that, although the Jehovah's Witnesses that came to the door the other day were a little surprised. But, even the Christ energy, I think I have a very dear friend that works a lot with the idea of the Christ energy, and it for her works beautifully. It's something that is not for everybody, but she works with it quite well and accomplishes some pretty outstanding healings and things with that grasp of that energy that she has. So I think if you're not, you should work with what you are comfortable with. You should work with what you can understand.
Yes, perfectly said.
Thank you.
Right.
I like being an eclectic witch because I can pull from my native backgrounds, and I can play in other little areas, and I can put a pumpkin out for Oshun, and she's happy with that. And then I can go talk to my native folks. And I like to think that I work particularly well with the darker realms, or the lower realms, I guess I want to say. They resonate, well with me. I like them very much. And but having said all that, I do think that as I age, I evolve. We all do, and in that, so does my practice. And so I've never been a light and fluffy bunny kind of witch, and I'm not now, but I can understand it better now that people who are, it makes a little more sense to me. But I am who I am. And I think that's the balance that I need. But being that eclectic part is such a wonderful way to just go and see how this works, and see how that works, and how it vibrates with you, and what you can offer and what you can take away. And if they're not talking to you, they're not going to talk to you.
Exactly. It doesn't really matter how much you want to talk to them.
Right. And if they do, you just listen. And maybe you'll work together for years, and maybe it'll be for a month, and maybe it'll be just once. But it's that you're open and ready and willing and able, and you just do.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this so relaxed and fun and interesting, is I can pretty much craft it as, it's all got kind of similar guidelines, but you can play with it a little bit more, and it's okay to play with it. It's not like, going along with my next question, it's not just black and white.
Again, I don't like those terms, but I just choose. I mean, magic is magic to me. Magic is magic. We shift fate. We will change the natural course of things. I choose to work in the light. I'm not going to do anything manipulative. And those are easy terms. I love how you use that's a friendly term when you were talking about Wicca. Whatever term you use, that was beautiful. I think white and black is just, again, oversimplified, but a really clear way to go, okay, I'll work on the dark side, and I won't work on the dark side. I'll work on the light side, whatever that is. That's the best I got.
I consider myself a very gray witch. I will do positive, and I will do things that if something needs to get taken care of. I work with a lot of people who come to me seeking justice in some form or another that is provable. I have a lot of rape victims. I have people, and I call for justice. I'll work with the darker meaning heavier aspects of Hecate or Medusa, or someone who I need to work with. So for me, if someone says, "Oh, are you a good witch or a bad witch?" and I'll say, "Well, piss me off and find out." you know I mean,
Yeah.
I'm here because I am not afraid to work my will, because I know how to work my will. I've trained long enough to do this. I'm not going to bring something out that I can't put away, nor am I going to bring unnecessary harm to anyone else, because it's going to come back and visit me. So the term is a very simplification. I agree, because that's what people understand.
Yeah, and I love that. And I work with Hecate, and I work with the dark goddesses as well. But to me, going in for somebody who's a rape victim, you're still, even though you're working the heavier side of things, that's still, to me, good magic.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's justice. You're not the one starting it. You're not going out and raping someone. That's bad.
Right. And I agree with you. Because you're working on both sides of that coin right there to bring healing to the person and justice for them. And it's so being comfortable, being able to flex what you're doing is an important aspect of working magical energies, in my opinion.
I agree.
Right. That is necessary sometimes, and if you study witchcraft and history, like, you have the cunning folk that would know the earth and heal, as well as like have to do protective magics and stuff like that. It's just all balance and choice, and that knowledge of when and what to do, and that lies with every person. So yeah, and honestly, that's what I do. A lot of traditional, like, Devonshire and stuff that I've learned from reading and studying Jim McGarry, and very raw rituals and a lot of ancient Egyptian stuff. It can be very spooky and very looked at as dark or black magic, but no, that's my warm, cozy blanket. That's the earth. That is the raw, like, magics that I've built that relationship with, and the old one, and it's comforting. And I have, like, I don't know how to describe it. When you build these relationships with the others or the spirits, it's like having a whole ancestry and friend group that from all over, and it's vast, and it can be a little bit overwhelming to step into a crowded room with people you don't know. But when you start to talk with them at the party and just get to know them after a while, and you keep coming back to those events, everyone knows you and they know what you're going through, and they send help or, a group to you when needed, and then you do the same for them. It's not all just take. It's give and take. And again, I use that word relationships. It's very important to me. That's something that I feel like, even on, a non-magical standpoint, relationships can be scary for people, just between mortals. And that's like that part of opening up yourself as well as learning. And I feel like a lot of those traditional witchcraft techniques can be viewed as very spooky and dark and scary, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does. That makes perfect sense.
So, see, this is one of those questions for me where I'm like, the stereotypical view and the, I would say, social, like, how this has been passed down through time. I might have a little bit of a different viewpoint than most people, and I am like, I don't believe necessarily in black or white magic, or that being said, I believe the world is full of gray, and a witch with the power and the techniques to kind of heal and bless also has those same, like, she's tapped in if she needed to use defensive magics and stuff. The magic lies in the heart of the witch. And to me, that's just a little bit of a dangerous statement. I know it's been kind of mainstreamed, and to kind of categorize. A lot of humans, we like to categorize and label. It's just like, it's easier that way for a lot of people. But I don't necessarily, quote unquote, believe in black or white magic. I believe that magic is nature. Nature has hurricanes. Nature has light rain, but it's all necessary in one. And there is time for defensive magics and stuff, but it all lies down to your intent. It just goes with that. I would say too, if the intent and in the heart of the witch is with like evil and harm, yes, that's not right to do necessarily, and that might bring back, threefold to her. But it's very, very dangerous to try and label everything and everyone, because again, your intent, like, I like to talk in little parables. I feel like it's easy to visualize that. Let's say you're a witch and you're trying to bless one of your friends, and it's, oh, I hope she gets that new job she's working for. And the end goal is her getting the job. And you have two different ways of throwing that intent out there. You could say, oh, I hope she does her best and just shines bright, better than everyone, and that's how she gets the job. Or your intent could be, I hope that everybody else, stumbles on their words and messes up and does much more poorly than her, and she gets the job. The end result is still the same, but your intent is different in your magics. And that goes with, your natural, like, impulses and stuff like that. So it's very, very potent, and you have to be very careful. And I think that a lot of witches will say too that you should be in the right mindset as well as emotionally put together for what you're crafting and what you're focusing your intent and magics on, because it can get skewed like that. But I believe, to answer your question, that everyone is capable of both. And that's just like saying too, yes, it's good that Christian or Judaic standpoint of we should not sin. Let us not go into temptation and things like that. But to say that, oh, we do not ever sin, that's a little on the lines of like, that doesn't sound like typically human and stuff. We all have that, just like Taoism, that yin and yang, that balance of light and dark within us. And when we know and understand both halves of ourselves, and you can keep that in balance and do mainly good and light magic, of course, that is a choice, and that's a decision, and that's your focus and your intent put out into the world. But that balance is within us, and that choice lies within us as well. So to say that one does not exist without the other, I don't necessarily agree that it's just as simple as that, labeling oneself.
There was a gentleman named Victor Anderson who began the fairy tradition in California, and he wrote a book called Thorns of the Blood Rose, which is, I would highly recommend it to anybody that wants to get a really interesting education from the poetic form. But he had a phrase that he used that said, white magic is poetry, black magic is anything that works. And I think that that's one way to look at it. You know, in my definition, black magic involves things like, personally, I think love spells are pretty close aboard black magic. Mm-hmm. Things in which you are imposing your will on someone else's free will. Cases where you're forcing someone, or you want to force someone to do something else other than maybe what they have in mind. You have to be very careful with that, whether or not that is a situation that you can rightfully impose your power over someone with. I believe that there, and in my lifetime, there have been situations where I was willing to take what I call the karmic hit for it. I think, you know, if you're going to, and some people are very good with baneful magic, other people are not, and should never do it and should never touch it. They should never, ever, ever get anywhere close to it, because you have to be quite positive that you know the right of the situation, and knowing what is right in the situation gives you the right and the responsibility to act upon it. And if you don't believe that, then I do firmly believe that it's going to come back and bite you very hard. There's a lady that I have read that says that she looks at baneful magic as sort of a surgical procedure, that there are times when you have to amputate the decaying limb to save the life of the person who has it. And I think sometimes there are reasons why individuals or situations can be worked on to remove them from the general. You can't, rapists, murderers, I think they've already overstepped themselves in raping and murdering and putting their power over other people. Therefore, if it comes to me to be able to do something to stop them, I believe that that is justified. I know people who would not. I know people who would say to surround the rapist with white light and you know, make him an easy target for police. Okay, what you do is what you do. That doesn't always work for me. But there's a great deal of responsibility in using black magic, and eventually it will come back, and you will have to look really hard at the price that you're going to pay for this. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. White magic is working for the good of the society, or for the good of yourself, or to change yourself in positive ways. Black magic is generally used or considered to be used to overpower other people.
Very nicely put.
It is. It's absolutely true. You have to be prepared.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I know that the idea of the threefold law is not as popular as it used to be. You know, that idea that what you put out comes back to you. I believe that completely. I'm convinced of it. I've seen it work too many times, even in my own situations, that the energy that I put out into the world is what I get back. And I think that if you make a career out of overpowering other people because you can, in order to get what you want, I mean, just look at the president, look at business people, look at anybody that wants what they want when they want it, not regarding what other people may have to sacrifice for them to get what they want. You cannot go through life like that. I don't care what you are, whether you're a witch or a truck driver, you know, you can't go through life like that. It's going to come back and assault you with your bad habits, and you will have to face, you know, it's even the Christians, that idea of Christianity. So you got to face God and look at the judgment of what you've done. And I think that witches even more so, because it is my personal belief that that's what we're here for. Okay, people that choose this path are not ordinary people. We choose this path so that we can learn more. about our lives, about our karma, about our job as humans and our job as spiritual beings in meat puppet suits. Okay, I think that our job is not to have an easy life. Our job is to learn things and help other people, and then come back the next time wiser and help more people. And I think there's a place for black magic. Some people deserve it. They have overstepped themselves, and they need to be. It's like a rabid dog. You have to contain the rabid dog before it does more damage. But not everybody can do that. And there are some people who should never get into that kind of animal control, if you will. They can't do it. And if you regret it, if you think badly of it afterwards, if you throw a curse at somebody, or you throw a black candle at somebody, and then you think, oh, well, now I feel better about it. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. No, you can't think back about it. You will reap what you have sown in a very specific way, says me.
Yeah, for me, the way I was always taught is there is no white or black magic. It's just magic, and it's just your intent that counts. And if you intend to do bad things and hurt people, then that's what you're sending out. And then it's unfortunate that a lot of people do actually do that sort of thing. They do have that natural intent for that.
Yeah. I think, again, to do this work that we all do, I think you have to have a good sense, whether it's integrity, a sense of right and wrong. If you don't have that, that's when you'll get in trouble. If you don't know the difference of what's good to do and what not to good, not black or white, that's the people who get in trouble. But most people do have a sense of right or wrong. It's not because of what it's written down in a Bible or anything else. Like, this is the right thing to do. This is not the right thing to do. That's simple.
I agree with you that ethical part of you needs to have a nice foundation.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, usually with my craft, I set out to always hold compassion first. So, if it's kind of my foundation for my intent is compassion. And I think that's what a lot of people in today's world really needs, is to look at using that more, because it is very powerful. So.
Yes.
All right. So my second question, what are your opinions on the stereotypical witch portrayed by the media? Now, I'm talking more about like little old Hazel, with the green skin, the warts, the long nose. Now, growing up, I don't know, I guess I grew up with a thick skin. I didn't really think too much about her. I actually like Hazel, so I'm interested in knowing your guys' opinions on that.
Well, I think it's getting better. I think media is getting better, even though it's still, now it's going Hollywood, like with the charm. Okay, be a witch, you're a sexy little girl, and you could do these things. But look at what the media does to everything. I think, again, with this new resurgence or this big rediscovery of what it is, I think media is actually going to follow that. I mean, there's better things in it. That Hollywood will always be Hollywood. Well, the evil will be evil and green and horrible, and good will be good. Though I did love Wizard of Oz. I have my own Glinda the Good Witch costume. And I actually use the term good witch more than white witch, because I don't like the term white witch. I don't like coloring it out, and I think that's, again, an oversimplification. But I'm good no matter how you look at it. But I'm bumps.
So I like that. I like that. Yeah, the color, the black or white, which the good or bad, which I agree with you with that. I love Hazel. I mean, I love the Green Witch. I'm a big fan of Elphaba. When the Wizard of Oz came on, she was my favorite because I knew that she was doing something a little deeper. I like the oddball stuff in these things, the little sideways things. So when I get the little ones that are coming and they want to be the prancy princess witch, we talk about what that really means and where they're coming from, and they're adorable. People are wonderful. Hollywood does, I agree, weird thing, and it depends on where you're coming.
Well, I feel like this is definitely not a new problem for any of us witches, even before media, even going back to gossip and the 1400s. Like, this is a problem we've had since forever. And that's just humans fearing what they don't know. So with the media, I feel like it's kind of, that's a very loaded question because, again, you can find both paths. It depends on where you're looking. And I'm that person that's again, knowledge is the key to undoing hate and that mistrust and miscommunication. We need to fill ourselves with more knowledge of things and studying history. And so I do believe in being open and communicating with people earnestly. Some of these things they've gotten smarter. Like, we need to give people credit, and also a little bit of mainstreaming is not necessarily a terrible thing, but there will always be people who will view something and thinking, oh, that's the absolute truth. So with media, I gotta tell you, yes, I do enjoy. I'm very pleased that J.K. Rowling has kind of brought that to the mainstream. It's wonderful to see young kids just saying and just believing once again in magic. And if Harry Potter was like one of those stepping stones for them to go, wow, that's a beautiful concept of viewing things. Let me actually see if there's some real truth to it. Let me study some history. Oh, and then they find out about witchcraft. That's a beautiful thing. But yeah, we've been stereotyped as the Wicked Witch of the West for a long time before the media, but I'm that hopeful one that says I'm actually very pleased with how a lot of things is kind of coming forth, and it's more raw, it's more visceral, that we have some really cool shows out there. I was reading the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comics a few years ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, look at how beautiful these pictures are drawn, and there's so many sprinklings of actual like witchcraft in this, mixed with, of course, that Hollywood satanic panic that everybody loves to add a little spice on things, But I'm that person that I'm like, yeah, you go, guys. Bring stuff like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and showcase like some of that. There's so many witches who are like, oh, yes, Aunt Zelda is giving me life with this. It's fun to celebrate those things and have like young little witchlings kind of putting a smile on their face and learning a few key elements from it. But it all goes back to, you need to take that as only a stepping stone and dive into the actual knowledge of it. So it can be used good or bad. The media is a tool. But its power of reaching countless people. And I say this, that's why I am in the film industry. Film is the art form that takes story, music, art with makeup, wardrobe, and emotional feeling. You can put yourself in someone's shoes for a few hours by watching the story and letting it unfold through you. That point of view might plant a seed in your heart and be like, wow, I never thought about living that way or feeling that way. And that is a powerful tool that film and the media has given us. But look at some of the wonderful shows that we have out there that's not even necessarily just about witches. American Gods, fabulous show. Thank you, Neil Gaiman. Thank you, stars. This is beautifully done, wonderfully shown. And those sprinklings of what a lot of us pagans hold dear to our heart are showcased beautifully to countless people around the world. And again, I think that it's a wonderful tool and a good stepping stone. And it all comes down to the heart of the person watching it and how they take it.
What are your opinions on the stereotypical witch that is portrayed by the media?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them. I personally, I think that the stereotypical witch, you know, a lot of those stereotypes come from other cultures and other times in this country, you know, where it was very profitable for the ruling Judeo-Christian religious class to picture witches and midwives and healers and all of those who were not good church-going folks as ugly and evil and not looking quite human. Personally, I rather like that archetype. It works for me, and the older I get, the more it works for me, because you're looking at independent, old women who have nothing left to lose, if you will. You know, that to me is the definition. That's the definition of crone that I work with, and I rather like that term. You know, I'm 65 next year in a couple of months, and I swept up crone as my banner pretty much the year I turned 60, because it's what that says to me is, you know, you're not worrying about. I personally feel that I don't have to worry about catering to patriarchy or catering to what other people think about me. I am independent enough and grounded enough in my life practices, not only in my craft practices, but my life practices, that in a lot of ways I don't need a lot of approval or a lot of people to approve of me in those senses. And so the stereotypical witch works really well for me. I really like it. But I think that it's important that as a witch who's out, and I mean, living up north, it was very liberal. Alonnie can tell you that it was very liberal in where we were mostly. I mean, if you didn't work for you know, public services and things like that, to a large part, you were able to be out as a witch in that part of New York. Was pretty easy to do that, and I was always blessed that I could, you know, wear my hubcap-sized pentacles and nobody would, you know, point flamethrowers at me. And so I think if you can be out, it's important to be out so that real people or people that don't know what witches actually are have an opportunity to see that we're just pretty much folks like anybody else, and that the stereotypes do not always apply.
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes. Now, in today's climate right now, I'm not entirely impressed on how the term witch hunt is being bandied about. And so that kind of gets my ire up a little bit. You know, I wear this as a badge of pride.
Yes.
And that I'm in. This is my place, just like anybody else's place. And please don't disparage me. You know, I'm not as militant as I was when I was 20, but you know, still, sometimes you got to remind folks, hey, you know, let's be a little nicer about that.
Yeah, it's a shame what they, you know, people come up with these phrases and they don't really necessarily know what it means to a lot of people, and then they are baffled when it, you know, does make offense or, you know, actually mean what it truly means or where it stemmed from, and it's really a shame.
I completely agree. Witch hunt is really derogatory, honestly. Like, if you think about it, and all of the countless people that have perished through that, that's like almost, it's very tacky. I don't think that is going to carry on years and years from now, because again, like, time is almost like a pendulum. Like, we scoot forward and then we slide back a little bit, and we scoot forward and we slide back. So things have definitely gotten a lot more in order since the Roman Empire and a lot of the stuff that was happening there. But that's just very tacky, and I think people will get wiser with the use of that. But that's it's got a bad taste in its mouth. Like, and it's misused. That's like saying, like lynching or something. Like, it's not to compare that, but it's with that perspective, that's not a good term to use. And if you watch some of the movies, even from the 80s, our typical language has cleaned up so much, which is wonderful too. And I believe that word will, given time, be scrubbed out as well. And it starts with you and I speaking up and saying, hey, that is not okay. And our culture is communicating with each other and learning from each other. And that's like the one beautiful thing about the technology and stuff today. I think we're all like taking those steps forward to say, listen, we are people. We all have different ways of living and different hearts, and we need to respect and love each other. And this is what helps me feel that I'm giving that love out to others around me, and what is, beneficial to say. And I hope that does die out over time, because that, when I hear that, I instantly think of the Malleus Maleficarum and just all of the most inane and crazy like excuses to put these people to death. It's not okay to see it like splashed across on the evening news using a word like that. It's just tacky.
Think that, bless his heart and politics notwithstanding, Donald Trump is the least of the folks to whom I would apply a witch hunt personally, but that's just my way of looking at it, since mostly the term applied to people, witches. The problem with a lot of the witch hunting in the old days, if you're talking about, Salem and pre-Salem back in those days, of the trials, the witch trials and the trials that swept across Europe at that same time, those were mostly poor people, less advantaged people. There were some folks in the nobility that practiced and who did their best, as I've read, to try to protect the folks that they associated with. But it was mostly a way to inflict the will of the governing body, the mayor or the ministers, on people, women, widow women that were older women, young, beautiful women that did not particularly want to submit in a sexual way to the folks in power. This was the charge of witchcraft, or a witch hunt was generally used to slander and take property for the good of the state, rather than because the individuals involved were practicing anything sinful or magical. And I think that the president's use of the term witch hunt I find offensive personally, because I think it doesn't apply. It's a frightening term. I have a very dear friend in Maryland who has decided to use witch hunt to categorize the magical folks that she knows in the Maryland and Washington, D.C. areas, who are currently working not for Trump's harm, but for the balance and the good return of the system the system as it was originally intended, the system of government of the Republic as it was originally intended. And they are working with St. Columbia, who is the matron saint or the patron saint of Washington, D.C. They're working with her in a magical way. And my friend has decided that in that sense, since their groups are witches hunting for a better thing, that's the way she is choosing to use the term witch hunt. But I don't know. I think you have to be careful with words that you throw around. And I don't believe that he might have gotten away with the use of that term 20 years ago. But I think in this day and age, there are an awful lot more of us speaking out in the public now than there were then. So it is a term that's going to catch that's going to catch him up short with folks that are willing to speak up about it.
And not just magical folks either. I think people who have been marginalized, and
Yes.
they, they're all part of that persecution, and so they're yay team us, speaking out and saying that's not the right word for what you think it is.
I don't think that word means what you think it does.
Right.
Is there any differences between a natural and a taught witch, and what does it mean to be either?
Am I going first again? Okay. A natural witch, I think, is like probably all of us. You're just kind of born knowing things. Though honestly, I think that humans probably all used to have more that natural instinct, but it just got taught out of us with modern society and just getting so numb to things. But I think a natural born witch is just, again, you're often gifted with a psychic or mediumship ability, and you just kind of have that attraction to nature, to herbs, to oils, to stones, and kind of even know what to do with them. But if somebody doesn't have any of that, they certainly can follow that path and learn it, because I believe all those gifts, as far as intuitions, can be developed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Being born with that glamour, with that is something that we're starting to see more people starting to open up to that and understand, oh, well, that's what that always meant. I didn't know what the term was. I didn't know what that really meant. And finding out that they have these natural abilities. And it's true, there are 11 million books out there. And not all right, and they're not all wrong. What's going to resonate with you and settle in your heart and mind is something that's going to work for you. And that's fine and dandy. I know for when I'm, teaching classes on this or talking about this, there's certain foundational things, how to protect yourself, how to, work with the elements. There are certain things that are kind of universal across things, and being able to allow people to stretch their limit and see those things. Maybe they won't even call themselves a witch, but they are, in all intents and purposes, doing all that magical work. So it's not even about the name at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of practitioners are actually just leaning more towards calling themselves a spiritualist. Mm-hmm. Maybe it just feels more comfortable because of all the issues that we did have with being called a witch. Maybe calling themselves a spiritualist just sounds a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah.
Just a name.
You're saying, I feel like a quote unquote natural witch has that easy connection with the others and her intent or his or her intent to magics and sending that out into the ether and those threads, I would say. Sometimes I like to teach and visualize magic as like a beautiful, complex, like imagine darkness and all of these red threads like strung all around you in this like really intricate web. Natural witch knows, like even with their eyes closed, if they are trying to send that intent out, they can just like instinctively grab the thread that they need and pull on it and send those magics to or from them. And then taught witch in the same sense, sometimes like developing that connection, it needs a little work, and they might touch one or two threads beside it until they get the one that they're looking for. And sometimes like natural witches, they can sometimes be hesitant with the gifts that they have. Like it's a gift as well as like sometimes, I won't say a burden, but to those like who see spirits and have them communicate with them easily, especially at that young age or when they're in that age of trying to focus on what I call like the other world, the world that we reside, like the modern world, and not necessarily the veil. It can be overwhelming, and they are like, like what is happening? And that's maybe them just naturally being gifted and practicing the craft. And sometimes they will shut that down to make it easier to balance between the two worlds. And when I say the two worlds, the veil and like the modern world, and being a witch, you need to have a hand in both. And that balance again within yourself it's up to you. There's some solitary practitioners that are pretty much like hermits out in the world because they want to focus mainly on the veil and the spirit world. They do not have time or necessarily want to put that energy into the modern and living one. So yeah, I would say it kind of goes between both. And I've seen there are witches who are natural as well as taught. Like they have this beautiful gift as well as being brought up in these pagan homes. And that's wonderful. Again, each path is different for every single person. And sometimes it is heartbreaking. There are times where there are witches that want to, well, it's not heartbreaking, but like, you know what I mean? Like you have to put a little elbow grease into what you're trying to learn. And it might be because like it might not be the right time. You might need a life lesson before you start practicing those magics. And that's why I think sometimes some taught witches in that label might struggle or feel frustrated at times. But I think it's one and the same. Like you can find those natural abilities through being taught or being naturally gifted with things. It is important also to learn how to use and live with them as well. And then there's some people who just are naturally able to flow with those magics and they have taught themselves. See, throughout like that relationship with the others and their instincts, they might work magic and not necessarily have ever cracked a book on certain techniques or recipes because they've naturally learned through themselves and those ways to just focus their intent with the way they are. And I would, if it works for them, it's not broke, don't fix it. And they might choose to live that way, where another might want to focus it in and strengthen it for a specific reason. So I would say that's kind of my thoughts on the labels of those two.
I personally believe that you can become a real, actual practicing witch and never have any training besides the books that you can consume. I think it's possible. I think it's better if you work with other people because you will learn things. There's a vast difference in the experiences available between working as a solitary from books and working with people that have been taught by other people who knew more than they did when they started, and practicing in a group. A group ritual is a much different thing than a solitary ritual. And I think that natural witches, in my humble opinion, we all have the potential to do that. You know, a lot of what witchcraft is, to me, are the survival skills that we had back in, you know, as long as cavemen. You know, the idea of being able to sense things that weren't there, being able to pick up on movement beyond your five senses, to be able to pick up on what the giant animal that was trying to eat you, where was it, and what was it doing, and is it watching you right now, and how to judge people and how to fit in. I mean, I think that those are skills that everyone possesses to one extent or another, but where some people can sing naturally and they knock your socks off at the karaoke bars, but they may never go any farther than that unless they get specific training from a voice coach and from someone who can teach them how to use their voices properly, and then they could become opera singers. And I think sometimes that's the difference. You may be a perfectly adequate, good, in fact, able to move mountains witch from books. But I think that working with other people will upgrade you to the opera stance. So I think there are people that are better at it. It's the same as there are people that are naturally better singers or better artists or better Comedians, they're better. They came with that. But I think that anybody could learn to be a witch if they wanted to. I don't believe that natural ability is the one and only thing that you have to have.
And with that, is there more acceptance in today's world for being pagan, Wiccan, or a witch than there were in the past?
Well, there certainly is in my world. Again, I'm left coast liberal world. If I was sitting in the middle of the Midwest Bible Belt somewhere, it may be different. But I even think, just because, again, indicator is media, I think that there is more acceptance. On the other side of things, though, there's also this whole right-wing craziness, murder and hell stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So the divide somewhat's getting bigger. But in the big whole, I think in the majority, yes. I'm going to say yes.
I think so too. There was a funny little article about there's more practicing Wiccans than there are Presbyterians in the United States now. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? But we do know that it's becoming more mainstream and more acceptable depending on where you live. You are absolutely right. There are still pockets in this country, and in this world, that will bring harm to someone who practices magic. But it's getting better. It's getting much, much better.
It is. Somebody called me yesterday, actually. They read about me. I was an article, which I had forgotten I'd done, in Reader's Digest. The fact that Reader's Digest has witchy techniques in it just blows me away.
That's fabulous.
Awesome. Yeah.
Great.
I'm like, where did you find me? He's like, Reader's Digest. What? Okay. Oh, yeah. I forgot.
That makes me giggle. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I say that it depends on where you are and what you're doing. That's, again, a very specific question to what it entails, because back in time, if we were in, before the 1400s and in rural communities, paganism was a lot more accepting. Before the wave of Christianity was coming through, and their festivals and their practices, it depends. And there was a very short time when there was a kind of harmony with both, and that was before. I think you guys have heard me say this in many different teachings, teaching other witches, and that goes just with knowing your history and even your art history. How the image of the god Pan got that propaganda and put on the Christians' concept of the devil and Satan.
Yes.
You don't find him described as thus anywhere in the Bible. Lucifer was a beautiful angel, and it was not until he was given that facade and that image of the god Pan, until they were trying to bring a lot of the pagan community and wean them away from their rituals and their sabbats and esbats and bring them over to Christianity. So it depends on when and where you are. As far as the modern age, I feel like if you're in a community that's in somewhere in Europe, or there's a good community that you can find yourself and that support being pagan. But if you're somewhere that might be, if you're outnumbered, so to speak, with believers, because somebody could be like, oh yeah, no, America is a great place and it's super safe, and you're like, well, I'm here in a small town, and I'm one of the only pagans in this community. That can be very dangerous. There's hate crimes for all different reasons, and we can't let our guard down, and then you can see both. I will say that if I can say a dear friend of mine, Laughing Brook Spellcrafting and Ancestral Arts was the name of her shop, and it was beloved by many pagans all around the community. And there is a dear friend of mine, Gabby Laughingbrook. There was an electrical fire in her shop after 4 years. And it was very shocking to see that some of the community, some of their hate speech from it was like, good, burn those witches out of town, blah, blah, blah. Like, we didn't want them here anyway. And she was there long before some of these other places that had popped up near her. But the community and the support that she has found, as well from fellow pagans, has lifted her up, and we've been there for each other. And I've traveled all across the world, and I still have never been to a place that was like the shop. She had an art gallery. She had classrooms where she taught lithomancy and just different types of magics, and witches from all over would come and even teach there. And her shop was like rooms and rooms, and it had a beautiful bone altar. It breaks my heart thinking about it. But it still like lives on today, and she's working on bringing about a bigger community. So we feel like the others gave a forcible change for the better because of what happened. We don't necessarily take it as a bad or good thing. But to go back to your question, is like, yeah, it depends on your viewpoint. There was a lot of hate that came from people, but also a lot of good. And I think it depends on where you're looking for that support, no matter where you are on this earth or what you're doing, can make you more of a target or less of a target. And sometimes coming out of the broom closet, yes, you do need to be wise and proud of who you are, but each path is different for each person. So it's hard to say on your question, because man, some days do I wish I could teleport back to where would I love to go? Cornwall. I would love to go back to Cornwall and just live in the countryside and practice with a few wonderful witches out in the earth there. That would be fabulous, and that would feel just like home. But I can find that same feeling here today with the right land and with the right spirits and the right practice when I'm focused on that.
I think so. In a very large part, yeah, I think so. Although a lot of the places that, down here particularly, a lot of the places that have never accepted it still are not accepting it. You get down into a lot of the deep South Georgia, and you will still find people that the only conversations they have are about what they did in church Thursday and Saturday and Sunday and every day of the week. But I think in general it is becoming more accepted.
Well, even the Pope apologized for the crimes the Catholics did against the witches.
Really? Good for him.
So we've come a little bit. Now, there's some other fundamentalist kind of folks that aren't going to tolerate anything about anything other than their own. That's just the way it's going to be, And it depends on who's got the money and who's got the power and who's got the more television time.
I think definitely there's been a lot more acceptance for it. I know I felt really comfortable coming out. Of course, I've surrounded myself with so many people in the metaphysical and paranormal field that it was a little bit easier for me. I know in high school, like I got called things like Miss Cleo and all sorts of different things just because I dared to be different. So for me, it's definitely improved. Before we go, is there anything that you guys would like to talk about, or like a message you would like to say to anybody who is listening?
For me, it's just Bring your power back. That's what I see when I work with the muggles or whatever, regular people. Everybody's given away their power, whether it's to society or to fear or to other people or to belief systems or to anger. We are powerful, amazing beings, just being human. So start discovering that. That's my one word of advice for anybody. You're pretty magical.
Oh, that's lovely. I like that.
Yeah.
I would say trust in yourself, because that's what witchcraft is. You are the most important and sharpest tool that you have capable. Like, sharpen yourself, learn things, trust in your instincts, and put your intent and your magics and your heart on the path that you want to go to, and know that there are witches and a community out there for you, no matter what your path is. We now have much more, like, so many vast ways of connecting with each other. Reach out. And I would say, yeah, just also open your heart too, and don't let any, differences scare you. And that happens to everybody, no matter what religion, what clique, what, even where you come from, where you grew up, and what your traditions are. And yeah, I would say thank you for being brave and sharing yourself, and make sure to lift up your fellow pagans.
Beautiful.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't be afraid. Don't do what your heart and your spirit call you to do, and don't let other people tell you. In my history, there have been times when it was better if I did not, show people the books that I read and talk about the things that I know that were dear to my heart. But that in its way is an old and time-honored witch tradition. Okay? And I think that if the day ever comes that we are told to, you can't be a witch anymore, I'll give it up as far as anybody looking at me knows, but I'll never give it up in my heart. And I think that you have to find that line. You have to find the line that says, keep at it. Don't let. It's a little bit like women voting and the suffragette movement. Don't give it up. People fought hard. People went to trouble to give you the freedom to be what you are now, to be able to call yourself a witch in public, and to be able to talk about magic and Wicca and do these things out where people can see you. Don't throw it all away. If you can't be out, then don't be out. But if you can, be as out as you possibly can. Do it for the people that aren't able to do it yet. And one day we'll all be able to do this.
So mote it be.
Yes. Blessed be.
For me, it's the time of year. Samhain is approaching very quickly. And so what do you like to do for this time of year? Do you have anything that brings you comfort that you do at this time of year that you would share with someone else? Say, hey, give this a try.
Oh, I'm so busy. I'm all over the planet, literally. I do a lot of teaching, which is great, and speaking, because it is Halloween, they're bringing me in, and whether it's under like doing a mediumship thing or even a seance, then I still get to go beyond the experience of that and teach them a little bit about nature and Samhain and, celebrating the dead and the crossing over and everything. I'm going to actually be at UC Santa Barbara tomorrow speaking to hundreds of college students. I'm going to get back on Thursday, the next day, to do it for USC. And that's our young people. That's amazing.
Oh, that is amazing. That is amazing. This time of year, someone asked me the other day, I was doing a lecture, and they said, so do the dead only come out at this time of year? And I said, no. For me, it's all year round, but it depends on your nationality, or your heritage. It could be any time of different times of the year. But at this time of year, I like to have a little dumb supper and have a little remembrance and just enjoy. It is, to me, it feels more, I can just relax. I can just wear my cloak outside and no one's going to bother me. right?
Yes.
You know, we do have pretty cool clothes.
We do have very cool clothes. Yes, that was what I looked at in choosing my belief system. No, it's like, oh yeah, wear that funny uniform, or I put on a cloak and dance around a bonfire. I'm going with that one.
I totally, absolutely agree.
Yep, that's me all the way. For this time of year, I like to do a lot of ancestor work. I do a lot of thanks. I do a lot of offerings. But that goes a little bit more with my native traditions too, though. That's what I do most of the month, is thanking and giving.
Beautiful.
It is the season. It is the season.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a beautiful question. So I'm actually very happy. I shared with you guys a little bit about my grandparents and how meaningful they are to me. So for Samhain, I always write them a very beautiful, in-depth letter about the past year and just speak to them. And I light a bonfire outside and do ritual and pay my respects, and then I will cast my letter into the fire and send those words to them since the veil is finished. So it's very important to me to give out gifts to my loved ones on Samhain, and then also to new potential friends and across the veil. So it's a huge deal for me. My husband and I always we like to throw big parties on October 30th, actually, because that way we're all there during the wee hours of the 31st. And our belief is like, it's not just one day either. Samhain is like very long throughout the thinning of the veil. So there's so many different rituals that I do, and I'll make little altars for the friends that I've made throughout the year, or spirit jars, like little homes for them and our new friends. So it can change each year, but definitely I always give my love to my ancestors, so to speak.
My practice tends to wax and wane a little bit, and I tend to be more big ritual, big pull out all those stops when I have other people to play with, as it were. When I do my own rituals by myself, it tends to be a lot more low key, and I think that stems from feeling like I have a better connection with deity now without a lot of the bells and whistles. But the bells and whistles are fun. And so Samhain, I've done big rituals for Samhain, and then I've done little ones where what I basically did was go out on the front porch and sit quietly and talk to my ancestors, you know. This year I'm trying to teach myself bone casting, which is a real, it is a conjure thing, but there's a lot of ancient antecedents for reading bones as oracles. And I'm trying to teach myself to do that. And one of the things that the books I've been reading, so there you go. Yes, do I believe you can learn things from books? Absolutely. If that's what you got, that's what you use. But most of the people that I've read say you have to introduce your bones or your trinkets to your ancestors, because in this culture, in this tradition, this is all there. Okay, there are mechanical ways to tell fortunes and to look at the future, and the tarot is one of those things. It's mechanical in that each card has a meaning to it, and if you don't feel spiritual that day, you can give technically accurate readings with just the meanings of the cards themselves. And if you read, she has a section in this book about dominoes, and that's a mechanical thing, and about reading dice with the numbers that come up. That's a mechanical thing. But the bones, Spirit will use those symbols, those items, those bones, to tell you what the messages that they have for you are. And so they said, well, you got to introduce your bones to your ancestors. You have to, sit down with them at your altar, and you have to tell them take each thing out and show it to them and tell them what it is, so that they know that if they have a message for you pertaining to that little piece of whatever, that's the stick that you use, that's the stone that you use. That's the wishbone that you use to get this message across. And so that's what I'm planning to do for Samhain tomorrow night. I'm going to cook something for my ancestors. I'm probably going to cook a pot of my mother's chili recipe. And I happen to know that my husband's family and, they were chili people. And I know my dad liked this chili, and my husband did too, since he's in spirit now. And I'm going to cook a pot of chili, and then I'm going to sit down in front of that altar, and I'm going to haul my little bits of stuff out in front of them and say, so, Dad, I know that you don't know anything about this, but this is what it is. And think about my father laughing at me going, I don't want to know about this stuff. I don't need to know about this. My dad and I had lots of differences of opinions about my witching. And he never came right out and said. He used to say that he was afraid that I wouldn't go to heaven. But he never came right out and accused me of being a Satan worshiper or anything. But, just the idea of trying to educate him about this stuff is a little strange, but I'm going to try it anyway and see what happens. So that is going to be my ritual. And in the course of that, I will be acknowledging the ancestors that went before me that I don't know, one's way back. I will be, doing some work with basically my ancestral spirits. I'm trying to make sure that they know that they are loved and honored here, even if I don't know who they were.
Yeah, and again, being in the middle of Los Angeles, there are some amazing Samhain rituals. I mean, hundreds of people really celebrating the dead around the big bonfire. And there's just so many. I can't believe how many really nice occult and witch-led shops are here now. It's not just all little new agey and whatever. It's a new world. Or an old world.
A little bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, it's certainly making things a lot more entertaining and interesting for me as I continue to grow in this field and learn all that I can. It's making it more acceptable and more readily available too. I'm able to, I've got so many different people in my phone now that I can just call up and, one's a witch doctor, or one's a high priestess, or, so many different people that I'm all connected to now. And so I've got all this knowledge just right there, and it's very cool.
Technology is in your favor.
It is.
We've come a long way from a circle of 13 and collecting fingernails and hair. It's come a long way.
Yes. Though I just say, I got in the mail the other day, unannounced, I don't even know who it is, the biggest envelope of fingernails and hair. It's like, oh my God. I haven't even addressed it yet. I open an envelope and they're falling on the floor. I mean, I haven't had that many fingernails in my entire life. It's like, is it a Wookiee or a big? And with this big old letter, it's like, why would someone do that? Why would somebody put 40 pounds of fingernails and hair in an envelope and send them to somebody they don't know?
Wow.
And it was asking for help, but it was just like so misguided.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I haven't had anybody send me anything yet.
That's good. It's really disconcerting.
That's okay.
Yeah.
If I got something personally like that in the mail, I believe that I would send it back immediately. I would send it back immediately and say, I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. That's to me seems, I would really have to know more about what they sent it for to make an enlightened idea about it. But that seems way over the top.
Yeah, it sucks. We do have that misguided viewpoint sometimes from people.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. It's always a good time hanging out with you on your podcast.
I love everything that you're saying and where you're coming from, and blessings to all that, the workings that you're doing and shall do.
Yes, thank you, and blessings to you too.
Beautiful. Oh, Casey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been truly a pleasure speaking with you tonight and with all of the listeners out there. I Must say lots of love to you now and always, Casey. Thank you 1,000.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Always a pleasure. Always a good time.
Thank you for joining my circle tonight. It was a pleasure to discuss this spooky topic with you, and a thank you to all my listeners for tuning in. And as always, dreadful dreams. Remember, my darlings, to always be kind to those around you, including our friends with claws, fangs, and fur. Hello, darling. Love the show and want to be more involved? All while showing your support? Have I got the perfect thing for you? Subscribe to my Patreon page today, and as a patron, you'll have the option to select which tier you are interested in, with exclusive patron-only offers from early access, live stream chats, shoutouts, distant readings, and so much more. If this has piqued your interest, please follow the link in the chat or go to patreon.com and search Cauldron Talk with Casey Colburn and become a patron today. Thank you for your support, darlings, and as always, dreadful dreams.